I have Section 10, I have Starting 9, I have CCK. But let's do rock and paper scissors. Like, let's do something new. Let's give people, like, you don't want to be the band that puts out one album and then you just tour for the rest of your life playing the same 13 songs.
All right, guys, welcome back to another episode of my interview series here on my YouTube channel. My guest today is someone I've wanted to talk to for such a long time. He has been a major influence in my career, and I'm sure the careers of many aspiring sports journalists, entertainment journalists, whatever you want to put it. This is Barstool's Jared Carrabis. Jared, thank you so much for joining me on this show. How are you doing?
Liam, I'm doing pretty well. We talked a little bit before we started recording, and it's crazy to hear that, like, you basically started following me right when we started Section 10. So it's like you've kind of been at the ground floor and then seeing like the peak and everything. So it's cool to see that, like, now you're pursuing a very similar career.
Yeah, it's nuts, and I always love going back and listening to old episodes and just seeing how the show has progressed. But I kind of want to start with where you're at right now. Obviously, quarantine has kind of put everything in limbo, but you started the rocket paper scissors series on Instagram, Twitter, all socials. What was the idea, the concept behind coming up with a show like that? And have you been surprised by just the crazy amount of engagement it's got? Because I'll tell you, I'm so much more invested in it than I would be. And I don't know if that's because of your Undertaker like streak going on
Yep.
or other reasons, but it's been phenomenal so far.
So I wanted to do something that was quick. Like I wanted to build up my Instagram. So I was like, my Instagram's boring. Like, if you're a guy, it's very difficult to build up a following on Instagram. Like, surprisingly, like, people just like looking at like attractive girls on Instagram. So like, if you're just an average looking dude, it's very difficult to build up a following. So I was like, all right, well, I need to bring something to the table here. Like, what can I do that's going to be like quick, but like you can't do an interview, but you I knew I wanted to take advantage of like all the relationships that we've been able to build over the years. So I was like, all right, maybe we'll just do rock, paper, scissors. And then like you can kind of throw in like one interview question like along the way. So you're still like, it's not just like the same thing every time. You're just seeing people playing rock, paper, scissors, but like there's going to be like funny moments. And then I think when I originally thought of it, I didn't even think of the wager thing until the last second, because I think I did one. I asked Kevin Millar to do one, and then he was like, "All right, what are we betting on it?" And I was like, "You know what? That's a good idea. Like, all of these should have wagers on it." Like, originally it was just going to be like, "All right, who can beat who?" But then it was like, "All right, if we put a wager on these, then it gets interesting, and also it creates more content for later. All like the bets that I have to pay up." Um, but yeah, that's kind of just where it came together. Is I knew a bunch of players, and I knew that they had nothing to do. So it was like, how do we utilize this in a way to where now it's an extension of like the podcast, where there's callbacks to different podcast interviews that we've done. And yeah, I mean, it's been a lot of fun. It definitely hasn't been fun losing, but I know that I'm probably going to have fun doing all like the wagers that I have to pay up on.
For sure. And I've kind of seen the same silver lining with the whole quarantine situation. While it's terrible and everyone's at home, it does mean a lot of people are available. So it opens up a lot of cool opportunities to talk to people that you might not get a chance to talk to before because of their crazy schedules. Now, I want to talk about your blogging side of things, because obviously before Barstool and before Section 10, you were just blogging at home. So
Yep.
how has this kind of quarantine situation brought you back to the basics in a way?
Yeah, I mean, it literally brought me back to the basics, because, as you can see, I'm in my childhood bedroom right now. I just came back to my parents' house yesterday. So yeah, like I'm lucky enough to where like they left my room basically the way that it was when I moved out, and it's in the basement, so I can keep my distance from them. Like, they'll be upstairs and I'm down here, and um, but yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of weird, because I would like to be. It's a catch-22 in the way that I definitely have more time to be blogging, but there's not there's nothing happening, so there's nothing to really blog about. So in that sense, it's like you have the opportunity to get more creative. Like I wrote a blog last night at like 4 a.m. because Trevor Bauer's cell phone number got leaked on ESPN. Uh, so I blogged that it got leaked, and then I FaceTimed him and then took a screenshot, and I was like, "Yep, it's definitely his number." So it's, you get to do different stuff, and but the other thing too, like how I mentioned with rock and paper scissors, is there's a lot of guys out there that have a lot of free time that wouldn't have that free time otherwise. So we've been doing more interviews in quarantine than we probably would have if we actually did like the Florida leg of the Spikes Up tour. Like Bryce Harper, like we teased it before we were going to go down to Florida, saying we have the biggest guest in starting nine history. And if we had gone down to Florida and gotten the interview with Bryce, there's no chance that interview is 2 hours long. Like just no chance. So in that way, it worked out great for us. I mean, that was by far the biggest interview we've ever done. It got picked up everywhere. But blogging, it's like it's one of those things where, especially now, because when I first started, it was kind of just me for baseball. I guess like there were, I guess, some guys, but in terms of um like the pecking order would still be like I'm at the top, but there are guys that are quicker to blog baseball stories now than before. Like there's more baseball writers. The competition to like grab a story and get on it is greater now. Probably for baseball more than any other sport at Barstool. So that's the tough part, is if there's a baseball story, then it's really just a race to see who blogs it first, and that's not my style. Like I don't just like puke on the keyboard and then hit publish. I like to take my time with it and like weave a story into it type deal. So yeah, I mean, I blog when I can, and it's still my number one thing that I love doing. Um, but I guess I gotta wait for baseball season to start and the Red Sox to be playing baseball games for me to really kind of sink my teeth back into the whole blogging thing.
Yeah, it's something we've been all waiting. I want to say impatiently for, because the
Yeah.
sports right now is pretty tough on the entire world. You talk about the pecking order and working your way up.
Mm-hmm.
Before you got to Barstool and Section 10 was first growing, and obviously it started in, essentially, was it your mom's basement or Pete's mom's basement?
The first episode was in Pete's mom's basement, and then I think the second episode was in the room that I'm in now, which is in my mom's basement, and then we switched back to Pete's. So like there were maybe one or two of the first 5 episodes were recorded in this room in my mom's basement, but like it became like we built a studio in Pete's mom's basement.
Wow. So when you think about that, like going back to where it all started, could you have ever imagined it would have led to being the most successful podcast in Massachusetts, essentially the breeding grounds for starting nine, and essentially Spikes Up tour, getting to talk to all these players in person, having those Barstool centric interviews that are more, personality driven than just about the headlines and everything? Could you have ever imagined the growth that Section 10 has done in, it's like 5 years, but the peak, I feel like 2018 alone just took numbers to a whole nother level.
Yeah. No, I never I never thought I was gonna ever do that. I remember because I've been friends with Pete Blackburn for like 10 years, and he reached out and he knew that he wanted to do like a podcast with me, and he kind of just wanted to do like a men's lifestyle podcast, and where we just talked about whatever, like, oh, what'd you do this weekend, and like different, like just whatever stuff. And then I kind of just was like, all right, well, I have a Red Sox following on Twitter kind of built in. So what about like a Red Sox, but also men's lifestyle podcast? Like we can just mesh the two together. He's like, yeah, I mean, sure. He's like, I like the Red Sox. Like, obviously, he's a hockey guy. But he's like, yeah, I mean, like I follow them. And I was like, all right, I guess we can try. We can see what happens. And we started that, and then we were both friends with Gary Streisky. So Gary Gary was our first guest ever in Pete's mom's basement. And after Gary came on, I think it was episode 10, Steve was working at Nesson. So that's how he found out that we existed. And then he reached out to me through LinkedIn and was like, hey, like I work at Nesson. I cut audio, I cut video, I do all this and that. Like, I'd love to help out. And we were just like, sure, if you want to like just like show up. And so he came into Pete's mom's basement and he never left. So he's still here. And yeah, I mean, it's crazy to think of like the guests that we had early on that came to Pete's mom's basement. Like anytime that there's a podcast and you want to have like a guest on, it's either they come to Barstool HQ, which is an actual like headquarters with legit podcasting studios, or you do something like this over Skype or Zoom. Like we had like Kirk Minahan, Jimmy Stewart, Jim Murray, Tim Britton. There's like a ton of like Boston sports media people that came to Pete's mom's basement to like do a podcast with us. And that's why like I don't care like how many listeners like a show has. Like if people ask me to do something, like I'll do it because like you don't know what that could do for someone. Like that's like paying it forward where like we wouldn't have been anywhere if we didn't have those guests. Like in the beginning, like Kirk Minahan did not have to come to Pete's mom's basement to sit down and do an interview with us. And I think it was because of all the guests that said yes to us. That's what really like jump started the whole thing to where people were like, oh, because 2015 the Red Sox were in last place. So people were listening to us because it was kind of a distraction from how bad the team was. So yeah, I mean, like I'll always be grateful to the people that said yes and came on. Like Katie Nolan, I think, came on one time. Yeah, so it's crazy to think that we went from like Pete's mom's basement, barely. I mean, I couldn't tell you like the listeners in the beginning, like maybe like a couple thousand, and that was like best case scenario. To basically selling out bars outside of Fenway during the playoffs and doing the intro to the podcast and having everyone know the words like it's like our hit song at a concert. Yeah, that was a rush. And I mean, I can't wait for the Red Sox to get back into the playoffs because the live shows, I mean, I don't have any musical talent whatsoever, but it's the equivalent of being like the front man of Motley Crue. It's unbelievable.
And the fact that everyone knows the ad reads by heart,
Yeah.
something that's just it's blown me away. But I also like will listen to the podcast and like I also know SeatGeek and like like
Yeah.
we like SoxSignatures.com, like all that.
People were literally people were word for word saying our ad reads. They were screaming our ad reads at the live show. So I don't know. I mean, the Section 10 fans, they're very loyal. Every home weekend, I go to Boston from New York, and Friday night, Saturday, and there's always like a crowd at Gate D, and we'll do like an hour meet and greet with everybody, and they're just like the most genuinely nice people to like get to meet in person and all that. So yeah, no, it's I had no idea it was gonna become what it has, and I still think it's we've only really scratched the surface too, because there's with starting nine, like we've had guests on that are like big names, but with Section 10, like we've had some big names on, but like we haven't had like the 2-hour sit down with David Ortiz, and like who's to say we can't get Carl Yastrzemski someday, and like Jerry Remy, I'd love to talk to him. Like there's so many, like Dawn Orsillo, like that's the interview that everyone wants. Like there's so much that we could be doing that we haven't done yet, and I don't know why that is. I think like Red Sox culture is a little more buttoned up, where guys aren't as I don't know, like you're not gonna get, for whatever reason. I think like players in Boston are more wary about media than anywhere else. And I do understand it. Like, obviously there's a lot of like negative media in Boston, but like that's just not us. So I don't know. Maybe we have to do a better job of letting the players know that we're not out to get them.
Yeah, it's hard in media because I feel like everyone nowadays is trying to conduct interviews or write articles, trying to get that headline, trying to get that click. Another thing I want to talk about was your personality, and I mean that beyond just like who you are, like essentially the Rocket, because
Yeah.
I feel like once that developed, and once I would watch the Barstool Instagram stories, and people are going around recording videos of like Stay Hot Rocket and stuff like
Mm-hmm.
that, kind of took on a life of its own, and that has kind of, I feel like, propelled you to like top tier Barstool status in terms of interactions on like Twitter and everything, because you're getting
Yeah.
people that aren't just Red Sox fans that love you to death, and not just Yankee fans who want you to like get fired or something.
Right.
Um,
Right.
how has Barstool helped form that personality? And beyond that, we can kind of segue into some pro wrestling too. How has your pro wrestling fandom helped forge that personality?
I mean, it's 100% my pro wrestling fandom. Like it's 100% like, um, I mean, I think because naturally I'm like shy and introverted, and that's boring. Like that's boring to a lot of people. But I am a wrestling fan, so there's a lot of CM Punk in there where I'm trying to like cut into you, and I'm trying to hurt your feelings. And like the number one thing, as it pertains to that, like people that like chirp you online, like if they say things that just aren't true, it's not gonna hurt. Like the secret is to say things that are true, and that really hurts when they have to come to grips with the truth. So that's kind of like what I was doing. Like you saw that a lot with like the 2019 Yankee streams with like the Yankees and the Astros, and being overly nice and just stating facts. Like if you're just saying things that are true, that's not on you for saying them. That's on them if they can't accept the truth. So that's that's just kind of what I like to do when I'm basically cutting my version of wrestling promos. And I mean, like the whole like Rocket nickname was made up because like Dallas Braden's anniversary of his perfect game was yesterday. It was 10 years, and he used to have Dialed In with Dallas Braden was his radio show on Sirius, and I would do like a 15 to 30-minute segment every day on that show, and it was funny to like Pecan. He was the other, he was the co-host with Dallas, and you could get that guy going, and he would just never stop laughing. So like whenever Dallas would talk about his big league experiences, I would always try to equate them to my high school baseball experiences. So just to piss him off. And there was a story that I told that was half true. I forget what got me to like tell the story, but there was a game that I was pitching where along the third base / left field line, cars were parked up against the fence and with like the headlights facing towards the field. And one of my friends for one of my starts was putting K cards on the windshields of the cars, like going down the line. That really happened. And then Dallas didn't believe that happened. And I was like, yeah, well, blah, blah, blah. And they also called me the Saugus Rocket, which just never happened. Like that was never a thing. No one's ever called me that before. And then Pecan just like started dying laughing, and he loved it. And he just ran with it. Like every day when I would come on, he just stopped calling me Jared and started calling me the Saugus Rocket. And it kind of like spilled over to Twitter, and then with like the Red Sox doing what they did, it picked up steam there, and we were doing like a bunch of videos throughout the playoffs, and like Dallas, like to his credit, like he kept it going, and I kept it going, and then now like more people call me Rocket than Jared. Like I don't it's so weird to like, obviously if you hear your name, your ears like perk up. Like when I go to Fenway, I get Rocket more than anything else, which is great because like a lot of people don't know how to say my last name correctly. So instead of Jared, they just go Rocket. And I'm like, that's great. That's great. I'll take it. But it is for me, like, for example, like in the wrestling world, like John Cena, that's his real name. So when people like boo him and they're like John Cena sucks and like John Cena this and that, like I'm sure it probably gets to him a little bit because like they're talking about John Cena the character. They don't know John Cena the person, but the name is the same, so it's hard to really tell like who people are talking about or to differentiate between the two. But for me, like people don't know Jared the person. They know the Rocket character, which is a shtick. It's like an extension of my true personality turned up to a billion. Like I'm not just like walking around my house like cutting wrestling promos on people and yelling all the time. Like that's just not what I do at all. I'm very calm and relaxed and laid back. It's just not it's just not even close to what I'm like in real life. So when people are like, "Oh, you're a douchebag and you're a hardo and this and that," it's like, yeah, you're talking about a fictional character. Like that's not real life. So it made it easier for me to be like, if you see like Jared Carrabis this and that, and it's like, well, are you talking about like what are you referring to? But like if they say the Rocket, I'm like, oh, all right, I know what you're talking about, and it's you wouldn't like go up to like Toby Maguire and be like, yeah, so what's it like being Spider-Man? Like that's just never a thing that's gonna happen in real life. Um, but I remember we had blogging school, I think I think it was like maybe end of 2018, early 2019, somewhere around there. And I remember Dave saying to like basically the whole company, like when he was talking about like how to have a personality at Barstool, like he used me as an example. He was like what Jared's doing, it's like you don't want to be able like your goal should be to have the audience not know is this real or is this fake, and that no one can figure it out. Like no one knows like if they're talking to Jared or this fictional Rocket character, and that's exactly what I'm going for. Like you don't want to go through the curtain and hear nothing. Like you either want to hear boos or you want to hear cheers, and I get to hear both because like I go to Boston, there's the cheers. I go to New York, they want me dead. And then there's, it depends on what show you listen to. Like if you listen to like Starting Nine, it's like, I mean, we get players from every single team on there, and there's no like Rocket shtick on there really. It's just I love baseball, and I'm interested in talking to these players. Like you get a whole different side. And then, when in videos, especially if we're doing like the live stream with the Yankee fans, like I'm going to do everything that I can to make them miserable because I know that that's what Dave wants. And I had someone tweet me recently being like, like it was pathetic that you tried to interject yourself into those Yankee streams. I was like, here's the exact text message from Dave saying, I want you on all the Yankee streams. Like he knows what he's doing. Like I was like, if Dave wants me there, I know what he's ordering, so I'm gonna give it to him.
Absolutely, and the Yankee streams against the Astros, obviously, it's hard to go back and watch them now, knowing everything, all the dirt about the Astros, because
Yeah.
you can't really be negative towards the Yankees as much as you'd like. But those streams were more entertaining than the games themselves, and I never thought like watching just like fans watch a game would be more entertaining. Like the game when Ellie was commentating, that was just genius. I remember telling all
Mm-hmm.
my friends, so many people who like don't even like understand Barstool. They're like, what's going on? I'm like, okay, here's the deal, and then I break down Chinese food gate and everything, and they're just
Yeah.
like, why is that so entertaining? I'm like, I don't know, but they know how to tap into those personalities. But you brought up a interesting point about separating the man from the character.
Mm-hmm.
It's difficult in like you said, pro wrestling when you have guys like John Cena, Randy Orton who use their real names.
Mm-hmm.
People are telling them, "Boo, you suck," even though they're booing the character. It's hard to separate because it's the same name. So
Mm-hmm.
how do you like cope with that kind of stuff? Obviously, I feel like since you've been in the media landscape for so long, you must be numb to it at some point. But even I write for I write for an MCU news site, and people will comment on my articles saying like, I hate this opinion. Why are you writing for this? I'm like, that hurts a little. That
Yeah.
I know you're just behind a keyboard and typing nonsensically, but like, it's something that I feel like you have to get used to. What was that process like for you getting used to just the natural form of hate in the media world?
I mean, it really depends. Like it bothered me for a long time because I think there were times when I mean, you have to learn the cycle at Barstool, and what that means is the Barstool audience, they like, or I don't even want to say the Barstool audience, because we're really talking about the vocal minority here, where if you think about how many people read Barstool Sports every day, like 6 million or whatever it is, and then you consider how many people comment on your blog. Like, I think the last blog I wrote got like 22 comments. You're talking about 22 people out of 6 million that read the website. So it's like, I just have found that smarter people don't say anything. They read what you write and they keep it moving. Because when I go out in public and you go to these Barstool events, none of these commenters are there. Like, and if they are, they don't have the balls to come up to you and say what they said online. Like, I don't think I've ever been chirped, except for like maybe 1 or 2 times in person. Like, it just doesn't happen. So you go to like these Barstool events, like those are the real Barstool fans, and they all love us. But you go online, it's like all these like miserable pricks, and they all have something to say. I think you just kind of have to look at it as the real fans are just going to read it, and they'll probably say something on Twitter because they want they want to give you the opportunity to respond to them. But if they comment on the blog, they know you're not writing something back. Like, they want to get their shot off without like getting a jab back. Like, that those are the type of people that do that. Like, I mean, and then there's obviously people that say negative things on Twitter as well, but there's a reason why a majority of the positive feedback is on Twitter, because they're not afraid to give you a place to respond. And there's a reason why a majority of the negative stuff is on the actual posts, because they don't want you to clap back at them, because they can't take it. They just want to throw a sucker punch and run away. But I've also like the cycle at Barstool is, if you're new, if you're a shiny new toy, they think that you're the greatest hire in Barstool history. It's crazy how every new hire is the greatest hire in Barstool history. It's because they're new, and eventually, either someone's act gets tired, it gets old, or you have staying power. And I think like the guys like Big Cat, Dave, Kevin, like a lot of those guys that prove that they have staying power are also the most successful people in the company. Like, there have been a lot of people that came in hot, everyone loved them, super popular, and then after a year, it's like, well, where are they? And you have to be able to reinvent yourself. You have to be able to like keep it fresh, and that's why guys like Dave and Big Cat and Kevin are so successful. Feidelberg, another one, because they're always finding new ways to reinvent themselves. And like their bread and butter, like the Pizza Review and PMT and KFC Radio, like their bread and butter are still strong. But then you got Dave doing like the unboxing, and like Big Cat's doing like the horse racing, and Kevin's doing like Friday Night Pints. It's like they're finding new ways to stay fresh with the audience, and that's why they have success. So for me, it's like it's the same thing. Like, I have Section 10, I have Starting 9, I have CCK. But let's do rock and paper scissors. Like, let's do something new. Let's give people, like, you don't want to be the band that puts out one album and then you just tour for the rest of your life playing the same 13 songs. Like, you don't want to do that. So that's why I think like the explosion of like the Rocket character in 2018, it was the perfect storm. It was something drastically different, and it coincided with the Red Sox winning a World Series. And you're on the duck boat and you're doing this, you get a World Series ring the next year. It was just such an extended ride. But that has a shelf life. Like I think with, you kind of saw the birth of it with the 2018 playoffs, and then you see like the peak of it with the 2019 playoffs with the Yankees. It's the same thing in wrestling. Like, you can't be the same character forever. Like, guys, you have face turns, you have heel turns, you have complete gimmick changes. There's a reason for that, is because you don't want to become stale. So yeah, and I think with the audience and the hate that you get the hate when you become stale. You get hate. You also get hate when you become successful. But I think the reason why Big Cat is so popular is because Big Cat, he's funny, he's obviously talented, but he's humble. Like, he's not like, there's a reason why the Rocket character gets so much hate. Like, that is like braggadocious and overly macho and in your face and loud and a pompous douchebag. And it's the polar opposite of like what Big Cat is doing, where he's just lovable and friendly, and he's funny, and he feels like he could be your best friend. Whereas the Rocket, you would be like, if I saw this dude in public, I would punch him in the face. But that's what you want. You want to be on one spectrum or the other. You don't want people to be like, it's whatever. So I don't know how I'm ever gonna pull off a face turn. I don't know what I have to do. I think it's honestly like, I've had face turns in my heel run, but I think it's funnier thinking like, I am a heel, but I'm going to do face things just to troll you, because I know that I know that I'm still a heel at heart. So like, you'll do all these like things that are positive and heartwarming, but on the same token, it's almost a heel move to pull off a face move as a heel.
The intricacies with just like how Barstool characters reflect wrestling gimmicks is like actually insane. Just hearing you talk about like, having to reinvent yourself. Like, I get a lot of Chris Jericho vibes from that, and having to just stay relevant, and one day you're the hottest thing, and then after a year you can become stale. That's like every guy that gets called up from NXT, you got to stay relevant as best as possible.
Yeah, I mean, Dave is the perfect comparison to Chris Jericho. Like, Dave has gone through like 50 character changes, but he still has like his, he's still Dave. So like, he'll still do, like the Walls of Jericho, like he'll still do that, but he's going to add in some new stuff, and he's going to have like a new character, and here comes the list, and here comes AEW. And I mean, Dave for sure is the Chris Jericho of Barstool, because he has reinvented himself more times than anyone else and stayed on top the entire time. Like, he hasn't done something that's flopped. Like, there's been no lull in Dave's character progression, which is why he's Dave. That's why he's the boss.
And I feel like when you reinvent yourself, you can kind of cast a wider net, because if your original personality gets like a core group of fans that are going to stick with you no matter what, then you try something new. So you do, say, starting 9, rocket, paper, scissors. People are interested in that content, but maybe not be Red Sox fans. And now you've gotten a bigger audience. And that's kind of what I want to talk about in this next question, that having your own voice, and like you said earlier, getting that reaction is so important in today's media market. How, like, we obviously talked about the formation of the Rocket personality, but I feel like your voice and your opinions are kind of distinct from that, or they're kind of intertwined. Either way, it takes a while to develop your voice and not be like robotic on air. I know it's taken me a long time to be able to be expressive and have flares of my own personality in writing or in my speaking when it comes to on air. When did that progression really hit its stride for you as both a writer and a podcaster?
Oh man, I don't know. I feel like I found my writing voice pretty early on. I think 2013 is when I found my writing voice, because it was like the first year that I kind of not gave up, but just like stopped trying to sound like I was in the press box, because I wasn't. It was the first year where I wrote the way that I talked out loud. And I think that resonated with a lot of people because I am a fan. And, if you are a fan, but you write like you're not, it's not genuine. So I think for the longest time, I was writing like I was in the press box. And because I probably at the time thought like that's what's going to get me a job. Barstool wasn't really a career path back then. Like it was the Globe, it was the Herald, it was the Projo, and if they wanted to, I knew that if I wanted to write about the Red Sox for a living, I had to conform to a style that wasn't my own. But it's like, all right, I'll dance, like I'll do what you want me to do if that means that I get to get paid to do this. And then after a while, I was like, all right, you know what? I don't care. Like I'll do something else for a paycheck, and I'll just do this for fun. Like I want to write the way that I want to write. And then 2013 is the first year that I started to do that. So that's really when things like I found a new gear in 2013, and that kind of paved the way for everything else, like writing wise. And then in 2015, yeah, that's when we started Section 10. But if you go back and listen to the first episode, I mean, it does not sound like me. It doesn't, like, my voice doesn't sound the same. Like, the emphasis that I put in certain words doesn't sound the same. I don't think I was swearing at all, which, I mean, I've always talked like that. It's just, I don't know what I was trying to protect myself from. Because I wasn't full time at I was part time at Barstool. I was not full time. I was making $500 a month, and I didn't know what was coming down the pipeline. I had no idea if that was ever gonna be a full time job with health benefits. Like, who knows? So I think I was trying to keep myself with a brand that could potentially be hireable somewhere else. Because I was. I think by the time 2016 rolled around and I was doing TV in Boston, I was doing a baseball show with Lou Merloni. That's really when I think my speaking voice changed. Because I posted the video recently of how brutal my Boston accent was when I was in high school, and everyone's like, "How did you just get rid of an accent that's that strong?" I was like, I have no idea. It was not a conscious decision. I didn't go to take classes for it. It's not something that I sat down one day and was like, all right, we need to get rid of this accent. I don't know how I got rid of it, but I think it was probably from like listening to more sports radio and hearing how like Beetle and Zoe were talking and Maz and Felger, those guys. And then wanting to, I guess, sound better because there's something about the Boston accent that I've said this before, like kind of makes you sound stupid. Like it makes you sound like uneducated. And I didn't want to sound like that. And I wanted to appeal to people outside of the Boston market. And I knew that, I mean, RA does a great job. Like RA's Boston accent is as authentic as it gets. And he's on the biggest hockey podcast in the world. And to my knowledge, I mean, people outside of Boston at least don't hold that against him, which is great. I don't think that the same would have applied to me for whatever reason. I think more people probably at this point identify RA as a hockey guy than a Bruins guy. I can't escape being a Red Sox guy, clearly. So, yeah, I think that was really the basis for it was I don't want to get boxed into the you're just a Boston guy and that's all you'll ever be. So I tried to get more comfortable just speaking. I don't even know what you would call it normally. So I guess that's kind of where I'm at. But yeah, there's definitely like a progression. Like once you start doing TV and live shows, like there's nothing to be afraid of. There's nothing. Like I think, yeah, like I don't sound timid anymore. I'm just comfortable doing it, and that comes through the reps.
Absolutely, and as you said, it comes through the reps, just getting a lot of experience. But one thing I want to touch on with experience is when you first start with a new gig, especially when it's like writing Red Sox or Section 10, not Section 10, Starting 9, you have a very in-demand and time-sensitive job when it comes to blogging, when it comes to a trade just happened, we need this article out in 30 minutes flat. And obviously baseball news is kind of slow right now, so I don't know how appropriate the question pertains now. But when it's a highly newsworthy market and everything's going on, and you're being kind of stretched in a bunch of different directions between Red Sox centric news, like news that is so specific that wouldn't make headlines on, say, a baseball website, but it would make Red Sox headlines, and then also having to report baseball. Is there ever a time where you feel like you get stretched too thin and it leads to any burnout, or is baseball just something that you'll never get tired of no matter how much in demand it is?
I mean, I'll never get tired of baseball ever, but there are definitely times where, the job can be a little much and you need a break. But I also kind of look at it as like this is baseball season. That's like when you empty the tank. Like that's when you're in demand and like in the off season. It's not that you like fade to the background in the off season, but you're definitely you're not called upon. Like if you think about it in like a bullpen sense, like the phone's not ringing for you as often in the off season. But I think Dallas and I have done a much better job with that this past off season. Like this past off season, I didn't feel like baseball season ended at all. I was out in LA a bunch. I was in San Diego for the winter meetings, and we did a lot in the off season. So I think we've done a much better job of avoiding baseball falling back when there's no games. I mean, there's still no games, and like I feel like baseball season's going on because of all the stuff that we've been doing. But yeah, I think that in terms of burnout, you kind of have to manage yourself. And I remember last year, like we had done like the Spikes Up tour, we did Arizona, we did Florida, and then to start the year, I think I had like 6 out of 7 weekends to start the year were travel weekends, and the one weekend that was no travel was the weekend of Easter. And I remember having to make like a tough decision, being like telling my family, "Hey, I'm not going anywhere." Like if it's Christmas, Thanksgiving, that's different. Like it's Easter, who cares? Like I need my downtime, I need my rest time. So I stayed in New York for Easter last year because it was the one weekend that I had to just sit there and do nothing. Because you think about it, it's like you get the you have 4 podcasts, yeah. Because once the season starts, Section 10 goes to 2 episodes a week. Starting 9's 2 episodes a week. CCK's every day. Snapchat's every day. You got it. Like you're doing like a bunch of ads for like the Instagram, like swipe up stuff that you got to film, and then the game starts at 7, and you're watching through the West Coast game, so that's like 1:30. And then you get a blog after the game, so that there's something like on there for after the games. So it's a lot. It's literally you wake up and go, and you don't stop until 1:30. So that's why I don't sleep great during the season, because if if I wake up at 8 and I write something early before I got to do whatever it is that I got to do in the morning, and then it just like starts that cycle of off you go and it doesn't stop. Like I'll probably be up until 3, because that window from 1:30 to 3 a.m. is the only hour and a half that I get all day where I don't feel like I have to be doing something. It's like, all right, everyone's asleep. Like there's no games going on. There's no news that's going to break that I might have to blog about. So like that window of time is the only time where like my brain can relax and just not have to worry about like, what am I supposed to be doing right now? Like what like if you have all these different platforms where you're live tweeting every game, and you're doing all this stuff on Instagram, and you're blogging, and you're making videos, and you're recording podcasts, and you're doing interviews, and you're doing radio, that's just like one day. And it is a lot, and you have to be really good at sometimes multitasking and time management. You're planning out your meals because sometimes you forget to eat. It's like, it's 4:30. Guess I should have lunch now. So it's a lot of that, and I think my family understood. They get it. And then it's not even just like the time consumption. It's also, like I said, it's the travel. Like you do that Monday through Friday, and you're like, finally, it's the weekend. Oh, this is actually when the real work starts, because it's like it's 7 days a week. You're doing all that stuff Monday through Friday, and then Friday you're gonna travel and you're gonna go to a different city, and then Friday you show up to the hotel, you check in, you go in, and it's like you're at BP Friday and you're schmoozing to set up an interview for Saturday, and then after the game Friday you get an hour-long meet and greet, and then Saturday you go back to the game and you're doing a podcast in the dugout, so you're there early, and then you're at the game, you're covering the game Saturday, it's another hour meet and greet, and then it just never stops. And then Sunday you travel and you go back, you get back to your apartment Sunday, and then you're back at it on Monday. So that's what drains you, is like you're tricking your brain into thinking that there's a finish line that doesn't exist. It just doesn't exist. So it's like 6 or 7 months of that, because if you think about it, Spikes Up is in February. So February, March, April, May, June, July, August, September, October, 9 months. 9 months with your foot on the gas, because it starts like Spikes Up tour, like it's intense. Like you're going, especially in Florida. Arizona is tough because like you do have the same hotel and everything is so close together. But it's like you're up at 6 and you're on the bus by 7, and you're probably getting back to the hotel at like midnight, and you want to like mix in a shower, because like I'm dead. Like if I wake up, I'm just kind of rolling out of bed and getting on the bus. So you come back, you shower the night before, you hopefully get to sleep by 1, you get like 5 hours of sleep if you can. But like it's a different hotel every night. Sometimes you're traveling 4 hours to the next town, and then you're interviewing like 5 to 7 dudes a day, but you got to keep that energy up. Like you can't be like, all right, so we got Bryce Harper on the podcast, and it's like you can't do that. So like it's a lot, and like that's how you start the year. Like that's like the cut the ribbon. It's a brand new season, and you're basically starting off like when you get back from those 2 trips, you're starting on E, and then the season starts, and like it's supposed to be when you're fresh. It's like brand new year, but like you started off like I just want to take a nap, and so that's why like I wrote my blog about Dallas, and there was like a line in there about people asking me like, is he like that all the time? And yes, he is. He's a crazy person, and his energy is always 1,000 miles per hour, and I need that, because there are definitely times where we're on the road and you've got to do an interview, and it's been a long day and an early morning, and you kind of just look at him, and his crazy ass is just, I mean, he's just going a mile a minute, and you draw from that, and it's necessary. But yeah, I mean, burnout is real for sure, and I mean, the best way to avoid it is to just, you've got to build in that time for yourself when you can actually get it, and that's, I mean, it's not often that you can get it, but those off days when it's like, hey, like you don't have to do anything today, which never actually happens. It's more like you don't have to do anything tonight. And someone's like, hey, well, do you want to like come out? And like, it's like, no, I'm going to stay in. I'm just going to chill. I'm going to hang out on my couch. I might watch a movie and then maybe go to bed before 1 a.m. That would be great if that could happen. But yeah, I mean, I don't want to sound like I'm complaining. I'm not. I love my job. I'm very, very lucky. I'm very fortunate, and it's my dream job. It's my passion. But in terms of like, is burnout real? Yeah, like big time. And but that's what we do. I mean, it's just it's one of those things where if you love it, you don't feel like it's work. And I love it. I don't feel like I'm working. It's just it's like whack-a-mole, but it never ends. It's just like every time you hit one, another one pops up, and like you never feel like work is done. Like very rarely do I finish a work day and I'm just like, all right, everything, we're caught up. It's like you're never caught up. It's always like you could always be doing something, which is great. Like like that's like my personality type. Like I would prefer to always just be going and doing something. So that's the life. That's for the life we chose.
Yeah, I really resonate with a couple of things you said there. The Easter thing about not wanting to go home because you just need to unwind. I remember when spring break rolled around and a lot of my friends were approaching me being like, "Oh, we got to go to Florida. We got to go." Obviously, everything got canceled because of coronavirus. But when I was being like approached about all these vacations, I was like, honestly, like sleeping until noon and watching movies all day for a week, I think is a little better for me than the beach right now. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to do all this crazy travel because you do get stretched thin between classes and extracurriculars and then doing your own personal projects and then applying for internships and then also staying in touch with your family and financial aid office needs you. It gets draining. So I resonate with the Easter stuff. Also the stuff about um, the 1:30 a.m. when it's like you have no responsibilities till 3. I
Mm-hmm.
hear that so much because there are days, especially nowadays, it's not really like that. I just stay up till 4 because everyone's sleep schedule is screwed up because of
Yeah.
coronavirus. But during the school year, there'd be days where I have an 8 a.m. the next day. I'm like, I really can't afford to stay up till 3, but it's the only time I get to really just like unwind and not have anyone text me about, can you write this article? Can you come into the studio? We have to record something for sports. And it's it's a nice like bit of peace and a nice escape.
Yeah.
You talked about not really having many days off, but if you were to have, let's hypothetically here, you get one day off, 24 hours. What is the ideal day off, relaxing, decompressing, kind of mental health day for Jared Carrabis?
Oh man. I don't know what that looks like because like my happy place is Fenway and I don't really feel like I'm at ease unless I'm, I guess, like accomplishing something work-wise. I don't think I know how to relax. Like I don't know how to do nothing and enjoy that. If I'm doing nothing, I feel guilty about it. If I'm doing nothing, I feel like I'm slipping. Like I'm like whatever momentum I've built up is now I'm falling faster than I was climbing if I do nothing. So I think like even if I had a day off, like let's just say I had the opportunity um to go to Fenway, like that would still kind of be what I would do. It's like I'm still even like I try to use my time off to like learn something or like it's almost like the retooling time where like I don't have to be doing this, but I'm doing it. Like going back and like watching like different like documentaries, like watching old games, like watching YouTube videos of like baseball players like explaining certain things. Like in my off time, it's like I'm not working, but I'm getting better at my job while I'm doing it. Like that's what I enjoy, and it also kind of gets rid of the whole guilt thing where it's like, all right, I'm not writing a blog, I'm not recording a podcast, I'm not recording a video right now, but I'm watching a video that I may use as a reference point somewhere down the line in an interview or in an argument with Dallas on the podcast. It's yeah, like I feel like if I'm not working, then I'm like stocking up weapons. Like that's kind of like what helps me honestly relax. It's like I'm not there's no pressure to perform right now. Like there's no like this better be good or like time's ticking, you need to get this out. Like there's no pressure. So in that sense I'm relaxed. Um and there is that feel good feeling of like in my downtime, like I'm still doing something that's work related. Um, like I said, like you're literally just like stacking up weapons to be used later.
Yeah, it's a weird time because obviously there's no real responsibilities and not like anything is really expected of anyone, but it's it's a time for people to get ahead and to hone those skills and to, like you said, watch videos, read references, stack up those weapons that you might not have the time
Mm,
to invest in if you didn't have all this crazy free time. One thing I want to touch on before we wrap up is the topics of mental health. We've kind of discussed it in a couple questions, but I did want to have one specific question pertain to it. Because burnout is real, and obviously the fans and the anonymous Twitter accounts can kind of get to you. How do you approach kind of maintaining that level of normalcy, I guess? Because I know for me at least, when burnout mixes with the negative reactions on Twitter, it can really start to affect my work consistency and my work quality. Like, it can kind of deteriorate a little bit. So I always like to hear about how people who have been doing this for years and years and years, how do you kind of shut that out, maintain like a good mental space, and not let it like affect your work?
Yeah, I mean, like, the mute button is your friend, and I have found that, like think about this, like, psychologically. Like, if you look at your Twitter feed and you've got like some dude saying something horrible about you on Twitter, I've found that out of sight, out of mind is just so true. Like, it's not like you value your relationship with this person. Like, you don't need to validate yourself to this person. So anything that you say to try to defend yourself, they're just going to like come back at you harder. Like, you don't gain anything out of responding whatsoever. So, like, if you want to yell into the void, be my guest. But I've found that, like, even if like I'm like super fired up about what I could say back to this person, if you just like type out what you wanted to say back, just type it out, get it out, delete what you were going to say, and then mute the person. And then you look at your mentions, and then poof, like the second that you mute them, they're gone from your mentions, and then you never see anything that they ever tweet again. So you get this satisfaction of like, all right, I said what I said back to you, but like, I don't care what your response is. Like, I don't need to actually hit send on this tweet, because I'm just giving you the reaction that you want. Like, it's gonna bother them if they say something to you and then no one says anything back. Like, it's just like, damn, like I am that irrelevant that like I didn't even get a response. But there's been times like that where, you know, I'm just scrolling by and someone just says something, and like you almost like feel bad for those people. Like, think about what type of like person, like what type of shape are they in? Like, what place are they in life to where they are just like screaming at or angry with a complete stranger who's just doing their job? Like, those people are the ones that need the help. So yeah, I've found that like the mute button is your friend, and like you're not soft if you mute someone. It's just like, I mean, if someone was just screaming at you on your front porch, would you shut the door in their face? Of course you would. Are you soft for doing that, or are you a normal person that doesn't want a psycho on your porch? It's the same thing. It's just like they're protected by being anonymous or being behind a keyboard. So yeah, I don't really. I've tried, definitely like within the last year more so than ever, to not respond, because I have found that engaging with those people and like having them either double down on what they said, or like what if they make a good point in response to something that you said, you feel worse versus like, all right, I saw the tweet, it bothered me, but I muted it, and now it's gone, and now he's gone. And if I keep scrolling, like other people, like there's other like things here on my Twitter, you forget about the tweet in like 10 seconds. Because then you see the next thing. Like, you see someone tweets you and like, hey, love your blog. It's like, oh, that made me feel good. And like, you just keep moving. Like, Twitter is just like so fast. It's like it's so fast paced. And then like, it's, yeah, I that's how I've handled it, and it works. And I just like, life is too short to be answering these dickheads on Twitter. It's just not something that I would like to waste any more time or energy on, because there's more important things in life than getting riled up over someone that you can't even see.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And one final question before we wrap this up, completely shifting gears, but just because I have to know, because I am a big hair guy, all of my friends know how much hair I put into my hair, how much money I waste on products. When did decide to grow out the hair, get rid of the buzz cut, and what's the process like for Jared Carrabis's fan favorite hair?
Yeah, I don't know that like it was like the same thing as the accent. Like I didn't make a decision. It just kind of happened. I don't know why. Because like I used to get my haircut when I was in Boston. I used to get my haircut every week. I used to go every Friday, and then when I came to New York, I was going every 2 weeks. Um, and then I think maybe because of like travel, I might have missed like a week or something where I couldn't find the time to like get my haircut. And then uh, I think I just like let it go. And I was like, I haven't. I tried to grow my hair out in 2016 and it just looked terrible. It was whatever, however it was being cut, it just didn't look good. And so I was like, all right, go back to the buzz cut. Went back to the buzz cut, and then um, this time around, I had a job, Barstool, where I could wear like a beanie to work, and like that's not frowned upon. So I was like, all right, I think I can ride out the awkward stage because it lined up with wintertime. So I was like, it's cold out and I can grow it, and no one's gonna really know that I'm growing it because I'm gonna be wearing this beanie anyway. So who cares? And then I ended up growing it, and then like people started noticing and people liked it, and then like it almost like took on a life of itself where like I don't know, like people just started like treating me different. Like like it was almost like you got like plastic surgery on your face and you just have like a whole different face. Yeah, like it's crazy. I mean, like I just rolled out of bed. I haven't done it today, but it's I don't know why I waited this long to have hair because it was a complete game changer for me. Um, and shout out to Lucas Giolito. He was the one that recommended the hair product that I use. So it's yeah, I don't know. I dropped the ball for a long time to not have hair.
What's the go-to product?
Lay right. It's the blue one, whatever that is. I don't know. I don't know what it's called, but I know that Lay Right is the company, and it's the blue, like it's like styling cream or something like that.
I'm a L'Oreal Paris paste guy.
Okay.
The fact that I can name that off the top of my head, there might be a little shame, but I'm content with my hair.
Yeah,
Jared,
it's great.
thank you so much. That's all the questions I really have. Obviously, your numbers are way bigger than mine, but if for any reason any listener that's listening to my stuff isn't already listening to you, where can the people find you? Anything you want to plug, feel free.
Yeah, it's just like Jared_Carrabis on Twitter, and then Jared Carrabis on Instagram.
Awesome. Section 10, new episodes all the time. I recently listened to the all-time teams one. I love the quote about obviously I'm going to only pick guys from one of my lifetime. Next we got Tris Speaker.
Yep. Next pick is Tris Speaker. Yeah, it's the all-time draft. It was intense. There's a lot of chaos in the war room, but I think my team was the best. Not a lot of people agree.
It looks pretty good from my end, from the graphic. But thank you so much for joining me on this show. We're gonna probably put this one out on Friday, so look out for. I'll put up like a social promo and all that kind of stuff. But again, can't thank you enough. I know we went back and forth a lot, and scheduling can be tough. But thank you for taking an hour of your day to sit down.
I appreciate it. Thank you for having me. We'll have to do this again sometime.